I'm going to be talking to you about one of the most important objects in the entire British Museum, and that's really saying something given the kind of collections we have here, but it's true. I'm Dr. Sushma Jansari. I'm the curator of the Asian Ethnographic and South Asia collections here at the British Museum. Welcome to my corner. This is the Bimaran Casket, and on the front you can see an image of the Buddha, and it's actually the earliest dateable image of the Buddha in human form. Previously, the Buddha was shown in symbolic form, so maybe footprints, a throne with a parasol on top, and it wasn't until this object was discovered and it had some coins with it which date to about the 1st century AD that we realised that actually this shows the Buddha as a man in human form for the first time that we can date. It was found in Gandhara, which is a region sort of based on the Peshawar Valley in northern Pakistan. It's a region on the Silk Roads, and it connected East Asia with Western Asia and South Asia. So there are lots of pilgrims, merchants following these routes. Buddhism arrived in the Gandhara region in around the mid-3rd century BC. It came from the Ganges Valley where the Buddha preached, and it was soon afterwards that the first stupas and monasteries were established there. By about the 7th to 8th centuries AD, Buddhism was in decline, and by the very start of the 11th century AD, it was essentially vanished from the area. Although a lot of the stupas and monasteries, which were beautifully embellished with sculpture, I have to say, although most of them were ruined, a lot of them were actually incorporated into other structures. For example, villages, some of the stone and sculpture was reused. So it's not as if all of these sites were entirely abandoned and sort of left to rack and ruin. They played a longer role in the history and the lives of people, the local people living there. Moving back to this particular object, so these were found in stupa number 2 of, I think, 4 or 5 stupas that were found around the village of Bimaran. The person, Charles Masson, who actually discovered this object, he opened up this stupa and inside he found this object with 4 coins next to it, and this object, the Bimaran Casket, was found inside it. So I'm going to talk about the Bimaran Casket itself first. It's cylindrical, as you can see. It's gold and really intricate, and the size and the intricate decoration really set it apart from all of the other small gold and silver reliquaries, not very many of them, which are found in Gandhara relic deposits. They're tiny, maybe like a centimetre in size. This is spectacular. You can see the Buddha doing the gesture of dispelling fear. So when you have the hand raised, it's called a mudra, which is a hand gesture. And on either side, he has 2 Hindu deities. You have Brahma on this side, and you have Indra on the other side. How can you tell the difference? So Brahma is usually shown as an ascetic, so he's wearing the very traditional unstitched clothing, the draped clothing on the lower body and the upper body. He has his hair up in a top knot, and he's also carrying a small water pot in his hand there. On the other side, you have Indra, and he's dressed in the clothing of a prince. He's wearing a turban, he has his draped clothing on again, and he has armbands, bracelets, and he is praying to the Buddha there. You might think it's unusual to find Hindu deities alongside the Buddha. It's really not unusual in Gandhara. One of the most standard sort of iterations of having them side by side is when the gods Brahma and Indra are entreating the Buddha to preach the Dharma, the Buddhist Dharma. There's one rather more mysterious figure here as well. It's this figure. And he's got his hands in Anjali Mudra, which is the mudra of respect, paying respect. It's really not clear who this figure is. It's generally assumed that he's a bodhisattva, and possibly Maitreya, which is the bodhisattva of the future. But who knows, one day we might be able to identify him. One thing that most people don't normally get to see, but I think is probably one of the most beautiful parts of this reliquary, is the base. Hold it very carefully, and you can see it's a full-blown lotus with 8 petals, and it's absolutely beautiful. So we've talked about identifying Brahma and Indra. How on earth can we tell this is the Buddha? Well, in later representations, he's often shown in this form with his hands in this gesture, with these 2 deities to either side. He also has a cranial bump. If you look closely, it's called an ushnisha, and it sort of symbolises his spiritual prowess. and you'll find it on most later representations of the Buddha. So we're going to move on now to the stone reliquary casket. It was originally in 3 parts. You can still see a small sort of indentation here, and this would have had a lid on top of it. But once again, that was also missing when the deposit was opened. So this object may well have had a separate life before it was included in this deposit. Around the top and around the bottom, you can see letters engraved into the surface. And those are in Kharosthi script in the Prakrit language. And Prakrit is a vernacular, an everyday language spoken in the region at the time. The inscription on the lid reads, "For relics of the Lord, donation of Shivarakshita, son of Muavada." The base inscription reads, "Donation of Shivarakshita, son of Muavada, given for relics of the Lord in honour of all Buddhas." It's interesting that the name of this, of the donor of this Buddhist deposit, he had a Shaivite name. You can tell he's got the name Shiva in his name, and it's maybe surprising to find that actually it's not unusual to have the names of Shaivite or even Vaishnavites donating Buddhist reliquaries at this time, the early centuries AD. If I open it up carefully, put this there, you can see the remains of 4 little parts on either side, and it would originally have been divided up inside, but those were scraped out so that you could fit this reliquary inside it. And it was also inside that you had all of those tiny little beads and tiny gold ornaments as well. Only about, I think, 6 reliquaries like this with the compartments inside have actually ever been found. So this is actually quite a rare object. So at the start of this video, I made quite a big claim, which was that this is one of the most important objects in the British Museum. I hope you agree with me. Not only is it the earliest dateable image of the Buddha in human form, it's actually one of the biggest and most intricately made gold reliquary of this size, of this date, from Gandhara as well. And it's in an inscribed stone reliquary. And you know what? It's just very, very beautiful to look at as well. So if you want to see these important objects, all you have to do is come to the British Museum and come down to the South Asia section of the Houghton Gallery, and you'll be able to see this in the flesh. Lots of my wonderful colleagues have done other episodes of Curator's Corner, and if you'd like to subscribe to the British Museum's YouTube channel, please do so here.